PC cases can be quite a divisive component. With a huge variety in size, features, looks and price, it's an ecosystem with something for everyone. Getting the right balance shows a manufacturer's expertise, but if they get it wrong, well, it can be a disaster. Thankfully, Cooler Master are past masters in PC case design. Today we're looking at their MasterBox K500L, a mid-tower model which is a step up from the Q300L we reviewed in March, but still firmly sitting in the mainstream segment. The case itself can accommodate motherboards up to 80X, with space for ample air cooling or modest liquid cooling solutions. For many, the major attraction will be that stylized front fascia, complete with glowing red LED fans. But there's more going on inside that isn't exactly common with this class of case. And of course, build quality continues to be key in every price bracket. Priced at £55 or 119 Australian dollars, it hardly breaks the bank, but does show off a little bit of flair within a pretty tight budget. So let's start with a broad overview of the case exterior, beginning with the fascia. It's not exactly clear on some publicity photos, but this model makes use of a mesh front rather than transparent plastic, allowing air to more easily pass through and promote better overall cooling. There is no additional filtering behind the mesh, so you might see some slight dust ingress. The rest of the fascia is a single piece of shaped plastic which is easily detachable. Behind here are two red LED fans. It's possible to add a third or replace them with fans up to 140mm in size. Cooler Master also claimed that it's possible to mount a 280mm radiator here, and so it may be a suitable location for all-in-one CPU or GPU liquid cooler rads. Front panel I/O and controls are located at the top and include a reset button, headphone and microphone jacks, power button, and two USB 3.0 ports. On the roof of the chassis, Cooler Master have placed a single magnetic dust filter recessed into the panelling, covering two additional 120mm fan mount positions. While no fans are included here, adding the filter is a nice, if minor, feature. Both side panels are identically solid steel with no transparency. However, there are variants of this case available with a fully transparent window held in place by 4 thumb screws. It's also always possible that these panels will, in the future, be sold separately. And it's actually something of a shame that these panels are solid, as the K500L does allow for some very neat and tidy system internals, as you can see. The internal layout is a standard ATX, and hence is generally suitable for mini ATX and micro ATX motherboards. Motherboard standoffs are the order of the day, rather than specifically raised areas of panelling. We're not the greatest fans of that solution, so we're happy with Cooler Master's choice in this instance. In total, you'll have space for 7 occupied PCI slots, but in fairness, you're likely to use 4 of these at most. It does, however, mean that you can space components out a little, to ensure that GPU cooling isn't fouled by a sound card, for instance. Finally, a quick glance will show a complete lack of optical drive bay, no surprise given the front, but also there's none of the usual stack of hard drive mounting trays. Cooler Master have gone for something a little different, but we'll get to that. This is partially what we meant by it being a shame that there's no window on this case. Cooler Master have completely blocked off the bottom of the case, and so both power supply and cabling are completely concealed. This makes arranging a neat and tidy build far, far easier, even without a modular PSU. Be aware that installing the PSU is a little bit of a palaver. You can't easily remove that cover, and there isn't a large enough gap in this other side to slide the PSU in. Instead, you have to mount it to a bracket, which is then bolted to the rear of the case. A thin dust filter sits on the floor of the chassis for the PSU's fan intake, but you're not going to be removing that without moving the case itself. That's a shame, but this is a budget case. Some would have no filter whatsoever. The 7 PCI slot covers all have ventilation and are held in place with standard rather than thumb screws. No punch-out slots here, thank goodness. Above them is a standard 120mm fan mounting point for the rear exhaust. It comes occupied with a CM JetFlow 120 as standard, which is black and without LEDs. And as we mentioned, there's space on the roof for 2 optional 120mm fans. On to storage. The K500L can accommodate both 2.5-inch SSDs and 3.5-inch mechanical drives, but opts to mount them in somewhat novel ways. 2.5-inch drives can be installed in 3 different locations. 2 between the motherboard and front fans, 2 on the roof of the PSU shroud, and 2 inside the 3.5-inch hard drive trays, under the PSU cover. There is a snag, however. Cooler Master supply only 1 bracket for the first 4 mounting points we mentioned, and so only 1 can be populated with a drive at a time. As a result, the maximum number of drives you can install is 3, 1 2.5-inch SSD, and either 2 additional SSDs, 2 hard drives, or some combination of the 2. The hard drive trays are simple to use. 3.5-inch drives clip in toollessly by pushing the sides of the tray together, or 2.5-inch drives are screwed in. These trays then slot in underneath the PSU cover, hidden from prying eyes. This is only accessible while the right side panel is removed, so keep that in mind if access to that side of the case is difficult where you intend to keep your PC. One other critical aspect of any PC case is clearance for components. CPU cooler clearance is still a factor despite the popularity of all-in-one liquid cooling today, and we're pleased to report that the K500L has an ample 160mm between the CPU socket and the side panel. As proof, we've installed Cooler Master's own Hyper 212 LED turbo, which itself is 160mm tall. As there are no obstructions from optical drive or hard drive cages at the front, the graphics card has the freedom to extend to the front of the chassis. The overall allowance here is up to 400mm, covering all of those oversized flagships. This margin, however, will be reduced if you use a radiator. Even with the PSU cover there to hide excess cabling, the K500L still has to provide some space for cable management behind the motherboard tray. In this aspect, they're quite frugal, limiting it to 1.4cm between motherboard, tray and side panel. You'll therefore need to plan out your routing and, where possible, not have one thick cable overlap another. Thankfully, Cooler Master have recognised the value of hooks on which to tie cables, so the actual process of tidying them up should be pretty easy. When it comes to water cooling, some may have the view that the K500L falls a little short. While the rear can accommodate a 120mm radiator with single fan, the clearance available in the top of the chassis does mean that radiators aren't supported in the roof. Thankfully, the front can accommodate up to 280mm radiators, even if this isn't the ideal location for a tidy build. You may need to get creative not only with cable management, but also tidying cooling tubes. Furthermore, to fit a 280mm radiator, you will need to remove the SSD bracket. And finally, we come to the overall dimensions of the case. It is 491mm long, 200mm wide, and 451mm tall. So it's neither huge nor petite. Truly it is a mid-tower chassis. Cooler Master's commitment to modular design has meant that they've been able to churn out many cases that are variations on the theme. Many of their latest models build on a proven underlying internal chassis layout, but are tailored to market segments through aesthetics and feature set, such as the case with the K500L, which utilises the MasterBox chassis in a competent fashion. There's plenty to praise here, from the solid build quality to the unique overall appearance. It's not often that cases within the budget bracket have a style beyond square grey box, but the K500L has enough in the looks department to tempt plenty of low investment gamers. Just as important is broad component compatibility, and the K500L doesn't disappoint except in one regard: liquid cooling support. Expecting bespoke water cooling would be too much in a case at this price point and with these dimensions, but some may be put off by the need to install AIO radiators in the front rather than the roof. Quite apart from ensuring that there's enough flex in the coolant tubes, it still usually means traying the tubes in front of the motherboard. That's a shame in a case that has such potential for great looking system builds. Speaking of looks, we should reiterate that the K500L variant with a transparent window is available. The model number is the MCB K500L KANN500. The clear acrylic window is held in place with 4 thumb screws, and it's identical to this K500L in all other aspects. Returning to the case's desirability when it comes to budget builds, note that this comes with not one but 3 120mm fans, 2 of which are red LED. That's not always the case in this price bracket, quite the reverse in fact, and appreciated when good quality fans start from about £5 and only go up from there. So, for a budget case sitting at just £55 or 119 Australian dollars, the K500L has an awful lot to recommend it. Of course, the front fascia will turn some people off, just as it will be the first point of interest for others, but in terms of overall features and build quality, it doesn't get much better than this at this price point. Personally, we'd be tempted to upgrade to the version with acrylic window to take advantage of that welcome PSU cover, but either way, you're unlikely to be disappointed by what the case offers out the box. And just think, with the money you save, you may be able to squeak in an upgrade or two to another component to your build. That's our take on Cooler Master's K500L. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and of course, feel free to leave any feedback. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.